All right.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you guys can hear us. But welcome to Table Talk. This is our Table Talk number 5. It's good to have you guys all here tonight. And our topic tonight is Honeymoon Part 2. And we're just very glad that you guys are here. We've got a couple of amazing other couples who will be here speaking with us, sharing their thoughts and stories with us. All right. Anyway, we're talking about Honeymoon Part 2. And that last question earlier was about, if you guys would still like to go on your first honeymoon. You guys can go ahead, turn off your videos too, so we can focus on our speakers next. And that honeymoon idea, my wife and I had a very interesting first honeymoon. Our only honeymoon. Right after we got married, we actually, one of Casey's parents' friends actually gave us a free, like, it was supposed to be like 2-3 nights, I think, stay at a resort. And there were supposed to be white sandy beaches and everything, and it was really, really awesome. It was amazing that she actually gave us this this free stay over there. Her parents heard about it. They were so excited, and they were excited because they thought, hey, we're all gonna go with you guys to this amazing resort. So that's what happened. We spent our honeymoon with her parents, actually, and a cousin who came along.
Yeah.
So that was really
It was a
interesting.
party.
It was a party. It was a family party.
No, we did have another honeymoon where a bunch of ICAers sent us to Pulau Seribu.
Well,
but-
that's true. That's
yeah.
true. But this idea of a honeymoon where you got white sandy beaches, beautiful sunset, moonlit nights, and it's something that we all want to have. And I think during this time of COVID, when we're all so stressed out, I think that's something that we're all thinking about as well. Can we actually have that? Can we actually go and do this? And I think it's a desire that we have. But I think one of the things I want to be able to say, unfortunately, is that a lot of times these white sandy beaches for your honeymoon, it doesn't exist. We can take you, however, to another kind of white sandy beach. Because I think the idea of the white sandy beach where you've got moonlit nights and beautiful sunsets, sometimes it can be unrealistic. But this next white sandy beach that we want to take you to, it's probably not what you expect. It can be pretty bloody, it can be violent, because this is more like the white sandy beaches of Normandy during the D-Day invasion during World War II. And instead of walking along the beach in sunset in the moonlit night, we get to find ourselves in the trenches. And to guide us through the trenches today, we have the privilege of having Daniel and Eva Tanusaputras joining us tonight. This is not their first time at Table Talk. This is their second time. And there you have them over there. And I want to say a little bit about them. Casey and I first met them a number of years ago, in fact, before they came to ICA, through their daughter, Tabitha. And it was amazing working with her. And we are very grateful and very excited when we found out that they were going to come to join us at ICA. And so they're the family life pastors. They've been married for 35 years. And Eva is from Switzerland. Daniel is from Bandung. But I want to let them introduce themselves a little bit, maybe, and say hi to everybody.
Hello, you all. Thank you for having us. And yes, we have been married for quite a long time, yet it doesn't really feel that long, does it?
No.
So, we have 2 children, grown-ups, and one of them lives in the States, married over there. One of them lives in Germany, married over there. And so we are parents with children far away and grandparents with grandchildren far away.
We knew each other in a short time. I think less than 1 year. We wouldn't advise for newly married. I think.
I mean, they got to know each other and got married within how many months? About 10 months.
10 months.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, glad to have you guys here again, Dan and Eva, for Table Talk. So we're looking forward to hearing from you guys and your wisdom and your stories. And the next couple that we have with us tonight, the Gresh and Lisha Samtani. And Gresh and Lisha, hi, how are you guys doing? And we're very, very glad to have you guys here at Table Talk for the very first time. We've, as a couple, Casey and I have known Gresh and Lisha for quite a while now, and we consider them good friends. They've been married for about 6 years now. They're professionals. Gresh runs a fabric business, curtains and everything, and Lisha runs a business called the Heart Project, and it's something that Casey and I are, we're very appreciative of what you do over there. And they use their business as a ministry platform. They minister as prayer warriors at ICA, and as well as the refugee ministry as well. So Gresh and Lisha, say hi to everyone and introduce yourselves a little bit.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for having us here. I'm Lisha. This is Gresh. We've been married for about 6 years now, and prior to that, we've known each other since I was 12, and we got married when I was like 28. So, yeah. But we too had a short period of dating, about 3 months before we got engaged, and within, before a year, we were already married. So that's a bit of our journey. Yeah.
I guess when you're sure, you just go for it. That's what we're learning here.
Yeah.
All right. So glad to have you guys here. And so this idea of Honeymoon Part Two, I think I kind of feel, honeymoon sometimes can be unrealistic in life. But interestingly enough, we live in times right now where it kind of feels like we're being forced into a honeymoon, because you're always stuck with each other now and you can't really go anywhere. And so maybe to start things off, I want to ask you guys, during this pandemic, what is life like now, and how has this pandemic affected you guys as a couple?
Yeah, how does it play into when we experience crisis like this, such as this pandemic? How is that affecting you guys personally and your marriage? And what are the experiences you have?
Maybe we'll direct this question to Gresh and Lisha first.
Well, this is what I'll say. For me, in short, I would say that this pandemic has been better than the first honeymoon we had. So it's the ultimate honeymoon, I would say. Yeah. So now saying that, I'm also going to be sensitive because it's been a hard time. This pandemic has not been easy. But one thing, because of having to slow down, and especially in our house, having all the helpers go away, we have had each other in each other's faces every single day, every single moment of the day. And with that, we have learned to communicate better. We have learned to tolerate each other better. And we have learned to understand and know each other better. And that's nothing like the first honeymoon we had, but where we literally wanted to kill each other every day.
That's really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that I think can be a good thing, A lot of people are having a hard time with the pandemic right now, with lockdowns, PSBB, and things like that. So glad to hear that you guys are actually growing in your relationship together, communicating more.
Not
What
just
about
surviving, but thriving.
yeah?
That's a good thing.
What about
That's a
what about
blessing.
you, Dan and Eva?
I think the first 2 or 3 weeks, I have a really hard time because, especially our protocol, Eva is so really strict. You know, if I go to supermarket or to wet market and back, Eva is already with the bucket, 2 buckets full with the sun, with soap and sanitizer, and I have to uh, put my clothes off and then half naked to the house. I have to take a shower or something. So,
She's the health police.
Well, my background is nursing, so that speaks for itself. But we felt like the first 2 weeks, yeah, more or less,
mm,
the tension was kind of steadily rising. I think we didn't know what to expect, and what was kind of uh, playing itself out. We had a hard time adjusting to that. We don't have children at home, but definitely no helper anymore either, kind of thing. But we felt like I had expectations for Danielle.
and I have expectation as well. Calm down, a little bit just calm. So
Well, he's very laid back, and I thought he would really do everything to protect us from this virus. So he would be really careful not to bring anything in. And in him being so laid back, I felt like you don't really care that much, do you? And that didn't sit well.
mm,
So for us, it was about 2 weeks that we didn't talk really about it. And then when there was a point where we said, we need to sit down and talk. This is not working. This is just not good.
yeah.
And so we started to explain our expectations to each other. We started to tell, like, I wish you would do this, or for me to do that. And then we started to find solutions to that. And from then on, it was like in the end, after that talk, we laughed together, really relieved, kind of like, okay, we might actually get that. It didn't feel like a honeymoon, though. No, it felt like a new reality that always challenges, but at least we felt we're together again in actually facing them.
Mm.
Sometimes
Right.
sometimes I feel ashamed, you know, as a marriage counselor, marriage and family counselor. But really, sometimes come again to the point that we have to learn again and again how to communicate, how to express my expectation to you, and you too, well, to me. Yeah.
I think it
That's
was so much that not knowing, but
mhm.
doing it actually. I mean, we
Yeah.
know so much. How much of it do we do? So I think that
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
that's what it, yeah.
Right. Well, it's actually really understandable. I think a lot of expectations are now, suddenly arising, especially now that we're interacting so much during the pandemic. Like we have to be, yeah, basically working from home together, doing all the chores together, doing everything together. It's like there's no escape. We used to have like, places you go to and I go to, and we don't have to deal with each other too much. But like in a moments like this, such as a pandemic, like expectations just come out. And I think this is one of the things that we've previously mentioned before. Sometimes, especially for us women, expectations that we have in our head, we already think our husband should be able to read it and just understand it automatically. Like, hey, aren't you supposed
Oh,
to know that? Um, just you're supposed to stay clean. Aren't you supposed to be helping already? Why didn't you just finish the dishes already? I don't have to tell you that. But those are expectations, and they just bring about a lot of conflict. And I can imagine a lot of households out there probably struggling with that.
which I think brings up an interesting question that I want to ask you guys too. When we do premarital counseling, and you do too as well, Dan and Eva, we always tell our couples, you need to get rid of your expectations. Well, we try to explain to them that there's a difference between expectations and needs.
That's right.
And sometimes the challenge is we mix the two of them up. And so, like things like, I need my, for a wife, I mean, I expect my husband to bring me flowers every day, but that's not necessarily a need. Um, it, what we're talking about right now it brings this question up for me, especially during this time in the pandemic. Um, is it wrong to expect things from our spouses?
I think it's
What do you guys
problem.
think about that?
Yeah, I think it's not. The problem is maybe you have to distinguish between the realistic expectation or unrealistic. Maybe so realistic, but you have to express more clearly in order your spouse can understand what you really want or desires.
Yeah, we feel like expectation if we are expressing them as a wish. I wish you would.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
That leaves the other person the options open. Like I can say, yeah, I can do that, or I'll think about it. Yeah, yeah, I'll try, but I can't guarantee that I'm able to do that. You know what you're hoping for, or I say, what? You're expecting me to do that? That's not me. I can't do that. And so it leaves me the options to actually react to the expectation. If I'm if he tells me kind of like just keep calm, and I'm saying I'm so anxious to keep calm is like really hard, you know.
For me, it's
okay.
easily to listen to client about his anxious, maybe anxiety or fears, but it's hard to listen to my wife about her anxiety, you know.
So you're actually expecting me to not be anxious.
Sometimes, yeah, more little calm, but it's not realistic, really. Sometimes I have to listen first to her anxiety or her fears, in order I can understand really why she's so anxious.
Mm,
And that's
That's
helpful.
right.
Yeah.
yeah.
That definitely helps.
What about you guys, Gresh and Lisha? What are some of the expectations that you guys have had to deal with during this time?
I think we're living in uniquely challenging times, and without undermining everything that has gone through, all the hardships that the pandemic might have caused, or struggles and challenges that we are all in. For me personally, I thank God for all the experiences that I've had in this past 6 years, whether be it good or bad, because early on in the pandemic, even prior to the pandemic, I was really getting closer and closer to the Lord. I was listening to Him more, and and I think because of that relationship really growing early on in the pandemic, when I saw things unfolding, see, my natural reaction would be, I expect my husband to take care of everything. And I mean everything, not just taking care of our health and all that, but also financially and everything to do with the business, everything to do with our household. Oh, surely we're not the ones who are going to be having to lose anything or to give up anything. But I let go of that expectation early on. And I realized that to put such an unrealistic expectation on my husband would be a recipe for disaster. Yeah.
However, not however, moreover, so I don't get to an argument with my wife, yeah. Moreover, I would tell you that please keep expecting from your spouse. That's the reason. You didn't get married for expectation, but I'll tell you that every girl or every woman got married to the man that she thought was her knight in shining armor, the Prince Charming, and every man would have gotten married to a girl that he would think is the Cinderella on the other hand, right? So in that case itself, there are expectations. It's just that once you get to know each other, those same expectations just fall into the equation when you actually serve and care for each other. That's what I think.
So many of the decisions that we had to make and all that, when we were forced to communicate, because we had to realign our priorities, check what's important, what's not. Like, you had to communicate with each other, right? And we also had to do that because we work together as well. Aside from the Heart Project, I also help my husband and am involved in his business quite a bit. So we have had to have those difficult conversations. How do we manage our finances? Something that, oh, this is not something we need to talk about, but actually you need to, because you need to know where it's going, how we're going to handle this, how do we face the employees, how do we face the suppliers, do we stop for a while, or what do we do? Those questions, once I let go of those expectations and realize he has no control over them, neither do I, it made it a lot easier. And because of that, I can testify that our relationship has been stronger despite the things that we have had to lose or give up. So praise God for that.
And I agree with you, Daniel. Just to top it off, I agree with you, Daniel. We can listen to any person who's anxious, but listening to our wives when they're anxious, that's very difficult. I don't know why it is, but yeah, it is.
Does
I
that
think
make you anxious?
No, that's not
yeah.
doesn't make me anxious. But sometimes that is coming to the point that I have to cry to the Lord. Look, my love is limited. Maybe just like eros love or phileo or the orge, like, but not really agape love, that unconditional, maybe sacrificial love. Sometimes need really extra intentional. God, please help me. I need help.
So are you saying that when I'm anxious, I'm difficult to love?
It's sometimes hard really to see, because when she suffer, I feel really just painful as well for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
I I
go
I
back.
understand. I think part of what the the unspoken thing whenever we have expectations, especially the wives towards their husbands, and or when we are expressing anxiety or we're expressing our issues. I know that one of the things that Anthony likes to do is to present solutions right away, and I think there is just that need to like, oh well, if there's a problem we got to fix it. So I think that's part of the what happens. There's a communication breakdown there, because I think most of the time we have this expectation or anxiety or issue that we want to present, but not really, we're not demanding a solution right there and then. And I think that's part of the communication gap that happens regarding our when we have these issues coming up. And so yeah.
Well, for me, I come up with the solutions because I feel like, well, okay, I know the problem. Why are we staying here? Uh, let's think 10 steps ahead. Um, is this the male version of, like when you expect something, the wives expect the husbands to know what she's thinking? And is this the male version of it somehow, maybe?
Yeah, right. Like you're thinking maybe that I expect you to give me
So
an answer, when really I just want you to listen.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes that's where tension arises. Um, and I think both couples, you guys earlier mentioned that, like Dan and Eva, you were talking about how early um, in the pandemic, you felt the tension rise more and more the first couple of weeks, because you were expecting that Dan would care more about what's going on, but it seemed like he didn't. And I know eventually you overcame that. Gresh and Alicia, you talked about the same thing, about Alicia letting go of some of those expectations early on in your marriage. Um, what were some of the steps that you guys took to overcome these differences and expectations, and to come to a resolution about these different expectations?
Yeah, how did the unrealistic expectations turn to a realistic communication?
Uh, so actually, to adjust our expectations, I think getting to know each other, really wanting to know, uh, wanting to understand, and to be ready to let go of your expectation if it just wasn't realistic. For example, my expectation to this day is for him not to feel so compelled to give me a solution. It feels like a compulsion. It's like if I say don't, it's kind of inflicting something on him. It's
You know,
kind of
sometimes I feel as a man need to be needed. If I can control it, I can solve the problem now, I'm a good.
yeah.
You know, so,
So I'm not giving you the chance to prove that you can.
sometimes maybe I need it from you again, affirmation or approval.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So in actually hearing that from each other and acknowledging that and moving towards it, um, I feel that God has shaped us in our expectations or hopes at the beginning of the marriage to
Yeah.
where we are now. And
Hmm.
what we feel it's because our life situations are constantly changing. So we have to adjust, and it's an ongoing process. It's not, oh, we're done, we're good, kind of thing. No, a new situation comes up, here we go again. So it's a constant adjustment and
Yeah.
being able to and the communication is actually listening. It's not so much talking, it is that too, but it's listening, trying to understand.
Sometimes for me, it's need just me time or me time with God in order you can calm down and just reflect. It's helped me. I have a tendency as well. If something a conflict happen, flight, you know, escape, not fighting directly, but uh, sometimes flight or freeze, just silence. Sometimes not doesn't help either. I have to, yeah, I have to go out again from my cave. But sometimes need a time for me.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, Dan, about finding that time uh, with God first. And maybe I want to turn the question over to Gresh right now. Uh, Gresh, what have been your experience when it comes to issues and trying to resolve issues? How has your own time with God helped you in meeting some of these challenges?
Well, I would start by giving this pandemic as an example. I mean, during the time of this pandemic, pressures are high, business pressures, and then economic pressures, and
Mm.
then yeah, even at home, everywhere you go, it's you have a lot of pressures, and uh, it's at this time if we are as we are called to be as men as the leader of our household. When I say leader, I don't only mean authority. I mean the leader of our household. It is very important for us to stick to God. And when I say stick to God, I mean the super glue kind of stick, because during times like this, without God, it's just impossible, because God's the greatest commandment says that we are to love God with everything that we have, everything that we are, and we are to love one another. And the love one another part it's an equally important commandment. It doesn't say it's not equally important. It is. And how are we supposed to serve and love? Because love is an action, it's not a word. How are we supposed to do that if we do not stick to love Himself? So that's what I think.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to stop for a moment there and maybe let all the viewers know that if you guys have any questions whatsoever, just feel free to type up those questions in the chat group. Somebody's going to help. Our team is going to help manage the questions, and then Casey and I will be able to receive the questions, and then we'll ask Dan and Eva and Gresh and Lisha
And we'll
about
have a question and answer
we'll
time
have a
later.
question and answer time at the end of this. But I want to maybe go back to what Gresh was saying, because Gresh, you are in the business world, and I think it's different for Dan and Eva, maybe, or even for Casey and myself. Um, you were talking about, challenges in at work, and um, you know, sticking to God, super glue kind of sticking to God, and so that He can help overcome those challenges. Can you share some bits of stories maybe about how even that at your workplace maybe has affected even your relationship?
Uh, well, this is how I would put it. I mean, we work together in the office. I am more in the sales department, and Lisha handles finances. And as you know, in every business, sales and finances will never see eye to eye. Some One department will want to sell more, and the other department will say, no, you need to stop and look at the reports. No, and so we have lots of debates. We have lots and lots of debates in the office, and uh, and during this pandemic, I would say we have had way more debates than we have had before. But we have always one thing that we have always realized, and it's not about us. It's what we have learned is that our relationship is a threefold relationship. It is not only Lisha and I, but it is God, Lisha, and I. And for everything, even when things start getting heated up, and as it always does in the office, especially, what we do is that we just sit down on the couch, and we just sit down and we take time to pray. And that is when we become calm, and we actually are willing to listen to willing to listen each other out. And seriously, there is no solution like sticking to God. That's from experience. I'm saying that.
Yeah, that's actually true. And what about you, Lisha? Do you have anything to share about that from your perspective?
It's easy to say that we're on the same team, but it doesn't always play out that way. And I've learned the hard way to have that ingrained in my mind. And more than ever during this time, that was what I always had to take a step back and say, look, there's an enemy out there, and my spouse is not my enemy. And if I am to make a decision, it should benefit both of us, not just thinking about myself. And it has to be honoring God first, definitely. So knowing that you're in the same team and actually living that out, that's really important. And just early on, Daniel and Eva, you were sharing, I read a quote yesterday or 2 days ago saying, beginning well is a momentary thing, but finishing well is a lifelong thing. And look, Dan and Eva, they've been married the longest amongst us three couples, and they're still learning, So I look forward to more years of learning as well. And I think it's a lifelong process. And it's not like it stops right. I got married. I thought I had it all figured out. You have the follower of Jesus, and who is experienced, and he had, we had a vision and a mission set out for ourselves, but first year of marriage was reality check. And so, throughout the years, we've been learning, and it helps to know who the real enemy is. And it helps that that you're in the same team, wanting to honor God and serving each other through that. And just those principles and holding on to them and living them out, it helps in decision making, And at the end of the day, even though our roles in the office are equally important, or even his business or my business, we try to put it on the same as they are equally important for both of us. It's also important to know that as a wife, I have to submit to my husband. So at the end of the day, there are things that I let him decide. And even though he consults with me, and I have to trust that God has put him in my life to lead us. And in turn, he has learned to love me even better. And I've seen the difference from first year till now, you know, and yeah, I'm really appreciative of that.
I think you're right in saying that we're always trying to learn. It is a journey, you know. That a lot of times I think we make the mistake of thinking that the marriage itself is the finish line of the journey, but it's not.
It's just the beginning.
It's just the beginning. I mean, the wedding itself, you know. So, and because you have an entire lifetime to continue to learn how to talk to each other, how to understand each other better, how to, and I think a lot of times things pop up in life. I think like now with what's going on in the pandemic, that it feels like we're having to relearn how to communicate all over again.
Yeah.
And you know what you mentioned, Lisha, kind of reminded me of what Gresh said earlier, that this time during the pandemic is better than your first honeymoon. Um, can I ask why that is?
So, okay. So I'll tell you, our first honeymoon was in a beautiful place. It was in Brazil.
6 months after we got
Yeah,
married.
we went to Brazil for a whole month to watch the
Wow.
World Cup, to watch the soccer World Cup.
I thought I was being the good wife. I thought I was being the good wife, saying, okay, let's go to Brazil. You can fulfill your dream.
Yeah, so those were 30 days in a very beautiful place, in a good, with places with good views, hotels with balconies facing the ocean. We used all those places to fight. We used all those places to fight, and you know, all those days, we fought about things that, if we think about right now, did not make sense. We're so petty. And I guess that was just because we didn't know each other well enough. You know, we did not. So there you go. The expectations were unrealistic because you are expecting from someone you don't even know that well. So that is
Right.
so that is why we kept fighting and fighting. I mean, not in the games. In the games, yes, we were enjoying, and yeah, we were cheering the team. But
Thank God for the game.
yeah, after that, but you know, it's like looking back at those 30 days, and right now the time that we're having at home with the view of the road and nothing else in front of us, I would say that this is so much better. This is so much. I would say I am so much more in love. That's what I would say.
Aw.
Wow.
My background is lawyering, and so I'm very precise with everything. I need everything organized. The day that we were about to leave, he didn't have his visa that he was supposed to have, and if it was not for the travel agents, you know, and the day we arrived, we already had to get the tickets, and it was just, you know, that was just a sign of how disastrous it would be. And I cried to come home. I was like, this is enough. And we actually, you know, instead of 35 days or something, we made it 30 days because I just wanted to go home. It was enough for me, even though I was seeing beautiful places, experiencing new things. But yeah, it was tiring in that sense. Yeah.
It really goes to show that, you know, in the beginning stages of our marriages, there's a lot of things we don't know, and so there's you know, there's a lot of these conflicts that come up, especially even at a honeymoon, you know, setting where everything is beautiful. And you know what, whenever we have counseling, one of the things we usually warn our about to be married couple is like, expect the first 2 years to be hard because it's getting to know time. There's a lot of things adjustments that you need to make with each other. And I'm sure with Dan and Eva, you guys had your version of this where you are both coming from a very different culture. very different personalities, and in fact very different height, like from people's expectation of what a husband and wife should be. And so I'm sure that played into all the tension that comes at the beginning of the marriage. Would you guys share how your experience is about that?
So I was back from 4 years in Thailand, and I met Daniel in Germany. And so I thought, oh, look, there's an Asian, I said to my friend. And so we got to know each other. And so I was taking some lectures at one of the institutions in Germany, and he said, I'm going to be there, so we met there. And we didn't know each other, but because at the institution for missions, so we had the same kind of idea. We had the same calling. We had the same passion, and we thought
It
that
would
would
be work.
it would definitely work for that reason. For one thing, have the same vision, but otherwise we were very different. I mean, I was Swiss, coming from the most individualistic country there is on earth.
I came from Indonesia, more collective society, I
Where you do things together, kind of thing. And so we got married in Switzerland. And then I moved with Daniel to Indonesia, which I had no idea what this was going to look like. I didn't, not the language.
Ikut suami.
Virtually. And for the next 30 years, and up to now, my visa is ikut suami. Okay? That's the status. But to the adjustments that we had to make while we were kind of, I was already 6 months pregnant when we came eventually to Switzerland. We had spent some time in Switzerland when we came to Indonesia. And Daniel went right into teaching at the seminary. And he was absorbed there. And I was there with a small baby, no friends, nobody around there. And so I looked for friends, and he had his work. And so right from the starters, we were kind of like living just beside each other. And that continued for about the first 4 years we were in Indonesia. We had a second baby. And after that, he was given a chance to do some further studies. And we went back to Switzerland. And only there, we actually started to communicate. So we actually had 4 years of really not communicating about our individual needs, where our hurts were, and so it was, I can see that by the grace of God, he allowed us that time out in Switzerland. I mean, he had to study, but I think because he had a plan for us. Yeah. And I see the goodness of God in the lives of us and with people that we meet, that God gives us chances to almost redo to a certain degree or relearn to do things. So that chances that we are having. And I think if we are ready to get those, to kind of really hold on to those and try to redo what has gone wrong. For us, it was 4 years going not good. And to actually do that. And we came back to Indonesia. I felt we came back as a couple, really having this sense of we're a team, like what Gresh, and Gresh and Lesha was saying, that the team idea, that wasn't what we had from the starters. It only came later.
Right. Yeah.
It was really hard to look back in the first 4 years, but God is so gracious to us that I could digest this thing. And when we came to Switzerland, Eva had a depression at the time, but she got help as well in Switzerland during my study. But thankful to God. But I say sorry about the time. This, I try to actualize myself. If I come to here to Saat Seminary, I have to prove myself that I deserve to get this place as a docent, as a lecturer. At the time, really, I had to say sorry about that to her. I had to say,
I had lost my identity. I couldn't speak the language. I our child's, the first child was Joshua, so I was Joshua's mom. That's basically who I was. And I have been single for quite a long time. So I got married when I was 34. So my single life had been very do it yourself kind of thing. And then suddenly we were two, and I'm still doing it myself kind of thing. So that was a lot of disappointment. But I can see that God really wants to help us heal, even in marriage.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much hope, but there needs to be a readiness as well, wanting to be healed, and the other person wanting to kind of like understand what was going on. Sometimes we are oblivious what the other person is going through.
Sometimes in marriage we start really bad, but we have still chance to finish well.
That's what Lisa
But
said.
Alicia said,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
that's what we would like to finish well.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is precisely what we're talking about, where we have this, we come into marriage with all these expectations and all of this grand dreams and idealisms of what it could be. And I think in the beginning stages, a lot of things that we discover with each other and the conflicts that arise because of the differences, and that stage where you still don't know a lot of things yet, you're still learning. It brings us to a place where we feel like, whoa, this is a battlefield after all. This is, it's like it's a war zone, and there's so much stuff going on, and it becomes difficult for us to imagine that, moving forward, how, I think some people would come to a place with, how do we move forward from this? I think even especially now during the times of pandemic, and we hear even the statistics generally that a lot of marriages are struggling. A lot of families are struggling because of this being stuck at home together, and not everybody has learned how to communicate well yet, and not everybody's in the same page yet, or not working as a team yet. Perhaps maybe we could share some of the things that some of them we've already talked about during this first few minutes, but maybe we'll kind of wrap this a bit as we prepare to go into a time of question and answer. Could we just maybe throw in some more specific communication tools or tips that we know have helped or would help these families or couples that are maybe struggling in communicating better with each other?
A reminder, James 1:19, that we have to be quick to listen and slow to speak. I think in order you can really not to be angry, that I think the skill to listen, actively to listen, reflective to listen, help us really to regulate our emotion as well.
Yeah, we found that you're not always ready to talk. You're not always ready to listen either. And so it helps us when we ask for time. Is this a good time to talk about, especially the more difficult subjects? The ones that maybe I'm already predicting they're going to be difficult or heated or whatever. And so when are we tackling that? Not before we go to sleep, because
I'm a morning person. She is a night person.
Yeah, and so we had to find an appropriate time for us. It was the afternoon, to find maybe half an hour where we can sit down with a cup of coffee and undisturbed, and just to be able to express what was going on.
That's right.
One other things I have been learning through the time, because we have a different personality, even more articulate, expressive. You know what she feels, what she thinks. I don't speak out always what I think, what I feel. And really to learn to, sometimes it's hard sometimes because he's so directly to talk, and I couldn't find a word, how to argue sometimes with her. merasa persis di pojokan gitu. I feel the corner sometimes. But again, to learn humble spirit, you know, how can you accept yourself? Okay, if I ask my opinion A, if I sometimes ask me why not B, why not C, why don't D maybe, you know, and I feel already threatened sometimes if she express her opinion, and I feel attacked, myself attacked, not because she doesn't agree with my opinion.
I was just asking. I didn't even express an opinion. I was just asking why not something like other things that would come to my mind would be on the plate for me as well. So, but that was already for him difficult for me. Kind of, you're questioning my judgment or something.
I have to learn really how to argue and to find the good words that I can argue with her. I think during this time, I have to learn how to communicate well, that she can understand and that we can argue fairly, you know, each other.
Right. And so I'm hearing from this is also part of this is like the perception that we have of what each other is saying. I think we sometimes see things at a different lens from what our spouse is trying to express. Do you? I'm curious to hear from Gresh and Lisha as well. What are some of the tools that you found helpful in communicating and arguing better?
Well, what Pak Daniel said just now, that sometimes he comes with what he thinks is a good idea, and we say it out, and all of a sudden the reply will get, oh, but you could have done it like this way, and we're like, inside we're like, oh God, you know. That's what you think, but you know that is the beauty in it. The thing is, we are all made differently. We are all made differently, and what has helped, well, I would not say argue better or argue more fairly, but what has for me, and Lisha, you continue after this, is that for me is that when I just take the time to listen, just take the time to keep quiet and not give a solution, and listen first to the whole story, which sometimes I think can be said like this, but it's a whole different way. There's a whole different way of saying it. But if I take the time to listen, and at the end of the day, it does not turn into a fight. It turns into a very healthy and purposeful conversation.
Right.
Amen.
Again.
Well, thank you very much, guys. We do have some questions that the viewers have already asked, and we've got like about 30 minutes to answer, you know, questions right now. But I do know that our team has mentioned that we've got a lot of questions. So if we don't get to your questions, guys, sorry. But we'll find a way to make sure that we answer your questions somehow and then maybe post them up. But we're gonna maybe start asking some questions to both couples right now. So maybe this is the first one.
Yes, and this one is good to for us to really talk about, because this addresses the questions of the singles who are participating tonight. So I think this is a good question to start.
Do you believe in the one? When you met each other, did you see each other as the one?
Maybe Lisha could
yeah,
start.
can I just I think one thing that I learned at my home church in Jakarta is that there is no the idea of soulmate doesn't exist. You become each other's soulmate once you get married. And that's a process as well. And Gresh and I, you know, prior to getting married, we had different relationships that didn't work out. And after getting married, like I said, first year of marriage, if he was like the one, it would have been like perfect, a bed of roses, and it would continue to be that way. I'm sorry, guys. First year of marriage and beyond, It's a reality check. And it's a lifelong character building school.
Amen.
Yes, it makes you better as you follow the Lord and you obey Him and you journey together in doing so. But no, personally, I do not believe in the idea of the one. And also, I do believe that God has His hands over our lives. I met Gresh when I was 12 years old. We kept on our communication going, our friendship, until a certain period, and then we just lost contact for a few years. And in those times, I suddenly was introduced to a friend who was going on a trip with him, and that's how I was reintroduced again to him. And it didn't take long before we started a relationship. So, you know, I didn't know that our paths would come across again, you know. And I do believe, you know, that God has His hands over our lives, and I do believe that when we trust Him and we hear Him and we follow Him, He makes it known to us what we need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, having calling someone the one when you are when you're in a relationship or getting married to someone is fine. It's fine. I think it's not a problem. But regarding that person as the one, it takes work and time. So
And
it's not, it takes work and time. It's not. It just does not happen overnight. So it doesn't mean that if you think someone you're going to get married to is the one, is perfect, and after you get married and the reality check comes, the person stops being the one. No, he or she is still the one. You guys just need to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you could find the one or the one, still the one is a sinner.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot that two sinners marriage, you need always grace of God.
That's right.
But I think even, I mean, we didn't even define the concept. What does that mean, the one?
Yeah.
The right one or the perfect one? Or, and I think for me, it was more the right one. In you know, yeah, instead of the not right one, which we had maybe known other people and those relationships didn't work out. So to know which one is the right one, the one that you, God, have chosen for me. Does God choose one for me? If I trust in my understanding, if I trust my life to God and every detail about my life, He is involved in. And hey, marriage is one of the bigger decisions, definitely so. So if I want to not make the wrong decisions, I need some peace about that. And when we got to the point where he was asking, would you marry me? Then I said, you know what? I need time. I'm not sure if I can make that step. And so I actually take a time out 3 days to actually pray, because I wasn't sure if I was ready to open my whole life and depend for my life, because I knew if I was going to get married to Daniel, that would mean moving to a country that I had no idea about. So was I ready for that? And then I realized I didn't need somebody I could depend my life on, but I needed to depend on God 100%. And then I could go wherever I was needed to go. So after that, yeah, it was fine. But the one to have the reassurance from God that He is the right one, for me, that was important.
Right.
I think
agree.
that's true.
I agree. I just want to say something. I had a really supportive family. Gresh had to answer a lot of questions before he could ask. And you know what? When I heard some of the questions, you know, when you're dating, some of those things, you just throw them out of the window. And when I heard some of those questions that people I respected were asking them to him to think about, it really made me think as well, and I am so grateful for that.
Yes, I
I
think
had to,
it
yeah, I had to
yeah, it,
call five. I had to call her uncle, her aunt, her mom, her dad, and her brother before actually being given permission to date her.
that's
Whoa.
right. Wow. That is interesting, and
Valuable.
I think that definitely helps. I when like as you said, I think it's definitely important for and it's our advice and our encouragement to all singles that we whenever we're making the decision about the person that we marry, we definitely first and foremost make sure that God is involved, that we are talking to him about this, and that like what Lisha was sharing, that we actually have a community and a family that we are in consultation with. This is something that we don't just like do without thinking. So those are definitely helpful. Now this
Oh, when I was living in the U.S., one of my pastors used to always say, um, "The one doesn't exist. If the one ever did exist, that girl or that man would be a picture of perfection. And if you actually could find the perfect man or the perfect woman, why would he or she want you?"
True.
Awesome.
That's true.
Don't look for
uh,
the perfect
Don't
one.
look for the perfect one. Don't look.
You remain single for your life if you look for the perfect one. You will
right,
remain
right.
single.
Yeah.
Okay, we're
Anyway,
going to move to the next question. And I think this one is related to expectations that we were talking earlier. But this one, sometimes expectations come from our families, right? So here's the question. I'm married to a woman whose parents are so dominant and they have a high expectation on me. Can you give tips on how to solve this matter? Maybe Daniel and Eva can start.
Uh, from experience, we cannot answer that. We can only from theory answer that. But maybe Lisa and Chris, because their families are very involved.
Mhm.
Oh,
So
that's right.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, um, in our premarital counseling, it was the pastor. He made it really clear to us that both of you, however similar you think you are, come from different backgrounds. You come from different backgrounds, different kinds of upbringing, and and as similar, once again, as similar as you think you are, you have to always create your own identity. You know, uh, when I say creating your own identity, I mean that for her parents, her family had their own identity. My parents, my family has their own identity. And now it's time for us to create our own identity. Remember, the man did not marry a girl, he married a woman. The woman did not marry a boy, she married a man. So it's not about fighting against your family. It's not about dishonoring them. It's about taking a stand and creating your own identity. That's the thing. From experience. That's what I think.
I think what also helps is just as your spouse is not your enemy, their families are also not your enemy. You are placed there to pray for them, to serve them, um, and I learned it the hard way because I had expectations as well, and once you can see it that way, then it becomes easier. Um, One thing that helped is when we are dealing with each other's family, we take the cue from one another because we don't always know how they would react or what their kebiasaan, their habits, or how they deal with things. So it would help that um, if there was a difficult question or this or that, we would consult each other before responding, before saying anything. So that helps.
I, I actually agree with that. In fact, I think that's one of the advice that we usually give to premarital couples as well. Creating that identity between you as husband and wife, that's crucial. That's important. And that's not a sign of disrespect, I believe, to your families. And it may not be the easiest thing for them to understand in the beginning. I think for Casey and myself, because we do come from different backgrounds, it was a challenge in the beginning, trying to allow our parents, both my mom and dad and her mom and dad, to understand that we were starting a new family, a separate family. I think the Bible, that's why the Bible says, and they're married and then they're off to be on their own. Because we do need to create that identity. And that's not to cast our families and, what they've taught away. But I think we have to learn to pick the things that would work for us from each family. And in the beginning, it was tough, but I think through the years, every time we tried to, we would try to explain these things respectfully and carefully to them. Eventually, they came to understand. Eventually, they would even say, "Oh yeah, that's not how you guys do things, so it's fine." But it does take time, I think. It is a challenge.
And I think we brought this up earlier. The teamwork is really important here. The concept of we, if you build your own identity together as a husband and wife and as a new unit of family now, you really have to, I think, put in an extra effort to protect each other. To remember that whether it's his parents or his parents or my parents are saying something, whether we're in front of his parents or mine, it is our job to protect each other and to bring that we factor together. But when we protect, we don't necessarily have to be disrespectful. It doesn't mean when we protect, we attack them either. We don't have to be abrasive towards our in-laws, and definitely we need to listen. In as much as in marriage, we really need to learn how to listen to each other. We also really need to listen to each family and to understand where their concerns are coming from. Why are they even bringing this issue up? But at the same time, and sometimes be there to just listen, even though it doesn't make sense or it's really painful for us, because maybe sometimes, and we've seen this, sometimes we're the only ones that they can really air out what they're feeling. Yes, they're also having, communication problems in their own home or whatever, but they just need somebody to vent out with. So sometimes we're the brunt of that and we just have to listen. But at the same time, when they begin to press on their expectations on us, I think part of the thing that I really appreciate Anthony always doing is that he would first really clarify, well, Casey doesn't usually think that way, and this is her background, this is where she comes from, this is probably, so there's all these things that he would say to help his family understand me more, or sometimes even my own family to understand me more. And then what we would do is if there's that pressure of saying, hey, you know what, you really need to do this, one of the things we would say to help ease the tension right there and then is to say, you know what, we'll take the time to think about that, and we usually take the time to pray about it as well. We always tell them that no matter what their belief is, we usually take the time to really pray and discuss matters like this, and we'll definitely pray and think about that. And sometimes that's enough, just to be able to, for them to know that they are heard, for them to know that we're not completely just ignoring them or standing up against them, but that we heard them. And of course, to also be able to clarify that with this we have to discuss. I always have to say to Anthony's parents, I have to consult with Anthony. I'm like, oh yeah, Anthony pasti maula, but I would be like, yeah, but I will definitely have to ask him first, because that's usually what we do, we sit down and pray and talk about it. So,
and then if we come up with a decision that the parents don't like, usually she just tells them, yeah, Anthony's just being weird.
No. Well, we whenever it's a decision that they don't like, it's something that we really pray. We already know if something they don't like, we pray and fast about those, and God always comes through to help with something. It's either they would suddenly their minds change about something, or an intervention comes in between. Like we had this conflict about choosing the date of our wedding, And yeah, we were
And
like,
God solved it.
you know, we don't believe in all these lucky numbers and all of that, but of course they were insisting on this. And so we really fasted and prayed before the day that Anthony's parents wanted to take him to ask somebody, you know, for the special number, for the right lucky number. We prayed hard, and then he was proposing one thing, and Anthony goes, well, how about this date? And this guy, the guy,
The orang
the
pintar.
orang pintar says, you know what, that's even better. And we knew that that was the Lord intervening.
All right. Dan and Eva are having some internet connection issues right now, guys, and they're trying to restart their laptop to get back in. But we're gonna go right ahead and ask a different, like the next question. All right, here's one. My wife earns more income than me in the family, and it makes me insecure. Sometimes she said that she can purchase stuff on her own without my permission. Can you give some advice?
Oh, this one is a little tough. Would you guys like to start, Gresh and Disha?
Yeah. Ah, yes, this is tough. Okay. Well, I think for a second, if for me personally, I think first of all, you have to be clear that both of you are in the same team. You have to know, you have to have that identity within yourselves. And when you have that identity, that relationship between that understanding, that exact expectation, and that comes only through the wisdom that comes from God. And because we human beings are a bundle of emotions, we are a bundle of assumptions, we are a bundle of thoughts, yeah. And very often things that should not make us insecure does make us insecure because of ego sometimes. I'm saying sometimes. I'm not saying this is why it's happening to this person, but sometimes. So I think, according to me, when both husband and wife are in the same team, they have an understanding, they have a relationship with God, and even if the wife is making more money, she knows that my husband is, she is to submit to her husband in the way that God wants her to, and uh, the, the objective of the relationship is to serve one another and not only serve themselves. I think it can work out. Not that it can work out. I think there should not be too much insecurity there.
Before getting married, I was working for someone as a lawyer, and I would be very cocky about it. And I would tell Gresh in the first year of marriage, when we would have financial discussions, that, you know, I could be making more money than you. And this is one of the things of communication as well. I bring this up because in the first year of marriage, I knew what triggered my husband, and I played it to my advantage. Being slow to speak is very important. I don't do that anymore, but that just shows how immature one can be. And so I would be careful about the things I say. As a wife, it is not our case. We as husband and wife, we are not living out what this person is living out. But to be honest, with Gresh being comfortable with my job or my profession, and the fact that I am also able to support him, and equally our roles are important, then that in itself, I felt he's confident enough to be that leader, you know. So I think for the man, you also need to be confident enough, even though you're not making the same amount of money or whatever it is. Besides the fact that maybe there are some things that your wife needs to do, but you yourself need to know your identity, and it is not defined by the amount of money that you make. And maybe you have to do the hard thing of communicating about this.
Yeah,
That's
and I
what
think
working at it means. Yeah.
right. And I think it's, it doesn't matter whoever is really earning more. There are seasons in our life, there's ups and downs in whatever businesses or things that we do. God would prosper one, and maybe one is struggling a bit. There would be times like that where it's different. And I think we both really have to be careful in the way that we perceive that and express that whenever we feel a little bit better because, hey, I'm earning something. Or maybe we also need to really have a we concept as well about this money thing. In as much as we have to have a we concept about facing conflicts, we have to have a team about money. If the whatever money comes in, whether it comes from the woman or the man, the husband or the wife, this is a family money, and it's our team money, and so we manage it together as a team, no matter who brings it home. So I think that's something that I find helpful as well.
Well, one of my friends in the US, he's a musician. His wife is an executive at a pretty big communications company in the States. And before they got married, some of us actually made a joke about that. Hey, she earns more money than you. And he actually said, well, that's a good thing. I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I want to stay a musician. Somebody's got to put food on the table. So, but I think it's true. It's not about, for him, I know that he was joking about it. We were all joking about it. But he knew his identity. And not simply because of a career or things like that, but I think he knew who he was, what his calling in life was supposed to be. And they both understood that whoever earns, the money, so to speak, whoever earns more, it's got nothing to do with their roles toward each other, their roles within their families, and it just so happened that she was making more money at the time, and they had an agreement. Well, this is our money, this is our income as a family, and we'll manage it together as a family. And I think that's what's actually important. So we've got time for one more question.
And I think we want to give just one more question that caters to the singles in the room, because hey, we acknowledge here that there's actually a big number of singles in our participants, and that's a really good thing. You guys want to learn more about marriage, and so we are very happy that you guys are here. So here's one question that we could probably address. What is your comment for to the speakers? Would you say becoming the right person is much more important than finding the right person? Maybe Dan and Eva could help us since they're back.
Yep.
Welcome back. Yeah. They had a technical
We're
difficulty.
finally back. Yeah. I think to become the right person, as it was put, I think that's a lot of truth in that, because be ready to change, to be molded, to be formed by this process of being together in this close relationship. And we are definitely not the same person anymore than we were before. And we're more like each other now than we were like 35 years ago. I have learned a lot from Daniel, because he is has a very different
different.
He's very outgoing. He is very laid back and all of that. And I'm more the introvert and feel okay being away from people, and he wants to be with people and all of that. And so in not staying in the position where we were, but learning to move, to try to understand the other person too. And actually there are a lot of things we can learn. And so today I'm not as introvert as to the extreme as I was then. And he has picked up a few things from me, so that this ability to acknowledge, I would like to be more like that, like you are, and actually ready to learn a few things. And so we feel like, yes, we have actually become so close to each other that it is really difficult to think about that one time we will be alone again. if it comes to that. So this idea of not just because we are depending on each other for a lot of things, but because of this oneness that we have now, that we are now enjoying. And as we described in the beginning, I mean, it wasn't like that in the beginning. So it is a process, and that we can have that and we can work towards it. Yeah, yes. So it's actually become more beautiful than it was in the beginning. So yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we have time for just the last question, and this will lead to basically the summary of this talk, I think, and will lead to a closing after this. So, listening to this, one of the our participants are saying, listening to this, I realize that my marriage is already messy. Then what and how should we do to start all over again? Where do we begin?
You know, we had a time as well when we stuck in our marriage. We couldn't really talk to each other. And we looked for someone to help us because our relationship so important. That's why we want to work on it. And we involve other people, especially professional.
Yeah, we found someone that we both trusted. And that person was actually helping us to get unstuck and to look at a lot of things from a different angle than we were looking at. And so that outside person became very, very helpful. And so I would encourage someone to say, if you're both on the same plate, to say, yes, we want to do things differently and better. It's not good at the moment. And that's okay, kind of thing, to be in a place like that. And we all have been and will be from time to time in a place like that where it's not good. But then if we need outside help, not to feel ashamed, we should be doing it ourselves. We shouldn't kind of bring our problem to someone else. That is shameful, for example. And to think that it is way more important for us to actually get out of this situation and have a better relationship is more important. And it's not about shame. It takes bravery to go and look and acknowledge we're in a difficult situation and we need help. So, and we do that when we come to God. We're kind of like, we don't know. I mean, we're so in such a big mess, and God would be a huge part of where we would need to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And then look for people maybe that could, or a person or a couple could help you in. If you both individually go hunting for advice, you will come up with such a big variety of advice, you will in the end not know what to follow. And people come from different backgrounds and different experiences, and accordingly you will get input. Oh, your marriage is doomed. Don't even bother about it. You better stop right here because, your partner should. And then you feel like, all right, okay, then maybe I shouldn't, acknowledging, kind of like I give up. So be careful with advice like that. And look for people who dare to try and dare to encourage you to do something that you might not have tried so far.
Back again to center, to God. I think that's very important. I just contemplate on the words from John Piper. God is most glorified as we are satisfied in Him. I think that's back again to God, to the center who created us and need the Holy Spirit to show us the truth. Every one of us as a spouse, that we can come to the Lord and please God, show me what my part make this marriage messy. I think God will help us. And yeah.
Gresh and Lisha, would you like to give your views as well? And this will be a way to wrap up our time as well. So give the advice that you can give to all these couples who are here and
Yeah. First of all, I'd say you're not the only one. Yeah. There were times in my marriage that I was ready to give up. And I have my husband's permission to say this, that to share this with you, that I have been ready to give up and looking my marriage as just something that I failed at. And okay, you know, even though it is contrary to my belief, that's it, Lord, I'm done. So that's as messy as it gets. So you're not the only one. And those times have really brought us down to our knees, and not just during those times. And that's why my husband keeps saying that we need to stick to God like super glue, because that's what's going to help us. And I really agree with Daniel and Eva when they say that talk to someone who will build you up. There are times in my marriage when I realize there are some things that I have to deal with sometimes, you know. And when God has shown them to me, I have gone to Eva for counseling, and I have gone to my mentors for advice. And together as well, we've talked to different people as well. So that's really helpful. And I think all of this just reminded me of one well-wisher in our wedding. She said that I hope that your love will grow each and every day. That when you look on your wedding day, it will be the day that you loved each other the least. And I know that my love for my husband and his love for me has grown. And that is also translated in different areas of our lives as well, towards other people as well. And if it's not for God, I don't know where would we be? Where would our marriage be? Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
hey, you know, we also want to be able to say, guys, that even Anthony and I look for people we can go to and consult and ask for help. I think one of the beautiful things, and this is what this table talk represents, is that we, this whole marriage thing, it is hard, but we don't have to do this alone. One, we have a God, like Lisha was saying, we have a God we can go to, and He is on our side. He
Amen.
wants to make us
Amen.
succeed. He's really created marriage. He is the one who started this all, and He wants it to succeed. And so we can come to Him for help, and we need to really stick to Him. Like what Gresh was saying, like super glue. That's going to stick to us now like a saying, huh? And so I think...
I want to put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Stick to God like super glue.
Like super glue.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Super glue.
And you know, and don't be afraid to go to your community for help, to trusted communities who will build you up. And this is why we encourage so many of our congregation to be part of a Go group, whether you're single, whether you're still figuring out who to marry, or how to navigate life alone, or if you're checking out somebody. Do it in community. Do it in a place where you know there are people there who will help you figure it out. And so be a part of a Go group, be a part of a Bible study, be connected with someone, have a mentor, have a somebody who can help you understand the Bible. And you know, even for me and Anthony, we go to Dan and Eva, you know, and we have times with them just as friends, and we come to them for help when we're getting confused. And so I think that God has given us a lot of tools, and we've learned tonight about those tools, you know, that you guys shared here. I just want to like recollect some of them for our audience to maybe jot down if you still want to note it. So expectations need to be tempered with reality. There's a difference between hopes and demands, and we need to learn how to verbalize our expectations properly. You know, one of the things that I think we need to remind our audience is that, you know, when you express your expectations, you do it in I statements. We don't say, you, kamu nini, why did you do this? You. Instead, start with an I. You know what? I feel this way, and this is what I think I wish it would happen.
Or I'm hoping for this.
This is what I'm hoping for. So start with I statements and seek to communicate. It's hard to communicate, but take the time intentionally to communicate, and don't just, you know, keep sweeping things under the rug. be an active listener. That's the key for communicating. Be ready to listen first, and give time and space to process, because it's difficult to talk and to communicate when you're both not in the mood. It's just not the right time. You're sleepy, one's already grumpy and hungry. There's a right
And I
time
think
for it.
that time that you have alone to process is important, because as both Gresh and Dan mentioned earlier, that's also the time that they take to seek God first, to ask Him, what do I do now? What's the next step? And I think that's very important. I think it's only through that we learn to see things not just from our perspective. And I think that was something that was mentioned as well. And it's only when we learn to see things from the other person's perspective as well as from God's perspective that we learn to forgive as well as see forgiveness. So humility is one of the key things over here. Pray and praise together. Be led by God, as you go through your trials, your challenges.
This is a really good question for that person who asked where to begin. Pray together.
Begin now.
It may be the most awkward thing, but if you don't know what else to say, you could just start by praying together.
Yeah, start now and start by seeking God first. Learn to live on a daily basis. And I think that was something that you mentioned earlier, Alicia, is about understanding who you are first. So I think remembering your first roles probably is important. Remembering your first roles as a husband, as a wife, and I think even in an extended family, if we want to talk about that, your roles as sons, as daughters, as fathers and mothers to your children, and your roles as the children of God as well, knowing your identity there.
Right.
And I think we want to end with this. Remember that you are in the trenches together. That was something that we mentioned from the very beginning. And Eva mentioned this, Dan mentioned this, and Gresh and Alicia mentioned this too. The enemy is not each other. It's not your wife, it's not your husband. The enemy is out there. And when we're in the trenches fighting a war, we need to remember that we need to help each other. And to keep those lines of communication open, not just with one another, but with the person who's commanding you. So make sure you keep your lines of communication open even when you're in the trenches. Especially, I think, when you're in the trenches. And that's all the time we have for tonight, guys. Thank you so much, all of you guys, for joining us tonight, for listening to Gresh and Alicia and Dan and Eva. And thank you, Gresh and Alicia, Dan and Eva, for imparting your wisdom and your thoughts and your experiences.
And sharing your beautiful stories.
Yeah, and I think it is true. We're not alone in our struggles, and we're all at one point facing the same issues at the same time. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories and your experiences tonight, guys. Thank you guys for sending all those questions. And I want to pray to close everything, pray a prayer of blessing over everyone. But before that, quick things. For those of you who sent questions and we didn't get to answer your questions, we want you to fill up the feedback form at bit.ly/ICA class. And that's for you to kind of like give a feedback about the talk and things like that. But at the same time, make sure you write your questions in there so that we can find time to answer those questions and then be able to send them out or post them up somewhere. And so make sure you do that. And for those of you who have more questions, or maybe you have other needs pertaining to families and relationships, you can always email family@icasby.com. And we want to be able to help you meet some of these challenges and give you pointers, give you ideas, give you suggestions, as well as be able to pray with you and walk alongside you, because we know when you're down in the trenches, it is not easy. So send those requests and questions and needs to family@icasby.com. And my wife mentioned earlier, for those of you single or otherwise, you don't have to walk alone. We've got groups in ICA whom you can share life with, share your stories with, and you'll be able to hear from them as well. So send an email, groups@icasby.com, if you want to get involved in a small group, a Bible study group, or any kind of groups whatsoever. And we've got groups of many kinds. Even during the pandemic, during PSBB, we've got a group for exercise. I haven't joined that group. I don't know how they exercise together, but they do. So that'll be interesting to see. So make sure you check, you send your email to groups@icsby.com.
And before we close in prayer, we've been asking questions to Gresh and Lisha, to Daniel and Eva, and you've sent your questions to us as well. We'd like to ask this question to you, because there's a reason you're here tonight, guys. One, what are the things that help you enjoy your relationship with God? What are the things that help you get closer to the Lord? And how would that help your marriage? Think about that question. What would help you get closer to God, and how would that help your marriage? Number two, how can we intentionally include the Holy Spirit in our marriage? How can we more actively make him a part of our conversation and our communication in the family? Not just with each other, but with our kids, with our helper, in your own private time. What are those intentional things that you can do so that your communication, the presence of the Holy Spirit, is actually actively present in your house? Those are questions we want you guys to think about and answer and do something about. We pray that you will have a growing relationship with the Lord, because that is the way for us to have growing marriages.
Amen.
And a growing family.
Amen.
Because we still all have a lot to learn.
Yeah. All right. This coming Sunday, by the way, we're going to start a new series on relationships. It'll be a 4-week series, so don't miss out the beginning of that series on Sunday for our Sunday services. Next week, Table Talk will be back. Episode 6 is going to be for singles, and it's going to be at the same time, 7 p.m. Stay tuned to Instagram for more information and for details. And let's close by praying. And I want to pray over all of you guys tonight, all right? Father, we give thanks to you, and we give glory and honor to you, Lord. You were the one who started us, our lives, individually. And you were also the one who started our relationships with our husbands and our wives and our children. And sometimes, Lord, we forget that you were the initiator.
Yeah.
It wasn't just simply us, asking the other person out. You initiated this, and you initiated our relationship. And I pray, Father, that we remember this very fact and recognize, Father, and remember the words in your words, Lord, that if you started something, Lord, whatever you have said, those words will never come back empty. Those words will come back having accomplished a purpose. So I pray, Father, for every couple in this virtual room right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have spoken in their lives.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You have spoken over their lives.
Yes.
And whatever you have spoken, Lord, let all of those things come back having accomplished something.
Amen.
And we know, Father, that something that is not now. That's going to be way down the road, years down the road, as morbid as it may sound, but the whatever you seek to accomplish, Lord, that'll happen at the end of our lives. And I pray, Lord, that you gave us the determination, the strength, the perseverance that we need, Father, so that we can keep running after that goal. There is a vision, Lord, that you have for each one of our marriages.
Yes.
It is not just simply for our pleasure. It is for your glory. And that is an amazing thing to look for.
Yes.
And I pray
Yeah.
that happens.
Yes, God.
Amen.
And for all the couples struggling right now, Lord,
Yeah.
facing so many challenges,
Amen.
Father, be with them. Do
Amen.
not let them go, and never be far from them.
Yes, Lord. Yes, God.
Allow them all to remember this. Allow each and every one of us, Lord, to recognize and see that you are indeed not far, that you're walking right next to us. And all so that all the things that we learn tonight, Lord, it's not just things that we forget tomorrow. That we let these things be things that we remember daily, and let these things be things that we strive for daily, because every day is going to be a new thing, and every day is going to be a new challenge. And I pray, Father, I pray that we can do this. I pray your Holy Spirit will empower us to do this daily, to wake up each day, to seek you first, to look at one another, and remember, this is the one that you have given, Lord, right now. It's not just simply the perfect one, but this, my wife or my husband, Lord, is the one that you have given me right now on this journey towards perfection that will happen at the end of our lives.
Yeah.
And I pray, Father, we learn to cherish that, and we learn to cherish one another,
Yeah.
and we learn to cherish you in the midst of our relationship. We give you all thanks, Lord. We give you all glory. And I pray your abundance of blessing, Lord, upon everyone in this virtual room. And I
Yes.
pray, Lord, walk with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Again, that slide up there, make sure don't miss out Table Talk next week. And yeah, we're going to give some time, I guess. If you guys want to say hi to people and things like that, turn everything to gallery view and just to wave. Thank you guys for joining us. Again, thank you, Dan and Eva, and Lisha and Gresh.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Casey.